Hello and welcome back to the competitive biography of Emanuel Lasker. In the previous video, we finished our coverage of the group stage, and now we are taking a look at the final stage of the Breslau 1889 Hauptturnier. The winner of this group will be recognized as a master in the eyes of the German Chess Federation, so there's everything to play for, even more than in the previous group. You can see the names of the competitors listed below the camera. Hopefully you'll recognize the 4 names from the previous video. Joining them will be 3 members from the second group, von Feierfeld, Lipka, and von Popiel. The reason why there are not 4 members from the second group is that the 4th member to qualify, a man named Dr. Ed, had to withdraw from the tournament at this point, and so simply elected to take the 8th place prize. Showing the standings is going to be a little bit awkward given that there are going to be buys every round, but we'll work with what we have. Lasker's opponent in the first round of this tournament is one of the gentlemen who held him to a draw in the first stage, Dr. Hans Seger. Now, Seger is a very respected member from the Bavarian Chess Federation. In its initial meeting in 1886 in Munich, he finished 4th place at their tournament, but it's worth noting that this was 4th out of 12 players. This tournament had a very similar format to the one we're looking at right now, where there was a group stage and the top 3 members from each group qualified to the final stage. So 4th out of 12 is certainly a very respectable score. His magnum opus, I would say, was from its second edition in 1888 in Nuremberg, where Hans Seger finished with an undefeated 8 out of 10 score. Just absolutely marvelous stuff. His appearances at the National Federation Congresses have not been quite so good. His first attempt was at the 1881 Berlin edition, where he failed to win a game, but if you look at his group, I mean, come on, Kurt von Bartheleben, Emanuel's older brother Berthold Lasker, the 19-year-old Siegbert Tarrasch, this was just an absolutely nightmarish group to be put in. He tried again at the 1887 edition, and while he did do better than his first time, he still did not score high enough to make it out of the opening group. So at this point in the tournament, Dr. Seger had to be completely full of confidence. He finally qualified from the first group, and he was one of only 2 people to draw Lasker during his rampage of that group. So this tournament was already a huge success for him, but of course it's not over. No, this final group is just beginning, and we are going to take a look at it right from the start. So Dr. Seger, with the white pieces in this first game, opens with d4. We're slowly moving down the list of pawns we can start with. Lasker responds with d5. We have c4, and now, of course, the most classical opening, e6. The queen's gambit declined. e3, knight to f6, knight to f3, and now a very popular move at this time, b6. This was a reasonable try in this sort of transitionary period between the Romantic and Classical eras, as this allows black to develop their bishops very aggressively in anticipation of a kingside castle from white. And indeed, after bishop to e2 and bishop to d6, both players castle kingside. Seger goes for b3 as well, and now bishop to b7 from Lasker. Now, of course, the most popular move here is bishop to b2. Another natural move, knight to c3, was played at the 1881 Berlin Congress by Joseph Henry Blackburn against Mikhail Chigorin. But here, Dr. Seger decides to go for the move knight to e5, and this move's a novelty. So it is as of move 8 that the players are playing a unique game. Now, in this unique territory, Lasker begins by playing the move knight to e8. This is turning into Lasker's signature move at this rate. We've seen it 2 times in 3 games now. Seger plays the move bishop to d3, and after queen to e7, he makes his intentions very known with the move f4. He's going on an attack right away. Now, Lasker, whether intentionally or otherwise, does kind of invite the aggression by playing the move f6. The move does come with very clear ideas. He wants to kick the knight out of e5, but this move just in general will be eternally controversial. And it's one that I initially thought was a mistake when I was going over this game the first time. Let me share my thoughts. I immediately thought here about the Greek gift sacrifice, bishop captures on h7 with check. Now, of course, if you play king to h8 here as black, then simply bishop to g6 and queen to h5, and there's just no way to stop checkmate. So king captures on h7, and now queen to h5 with check. King back to g8, and now another problem with playing f6 is that you've given up the g6 square. So knight to g6 does come with a fork, but it seems like black simply avoids all the danger with queen to d8, and there's no knockout blow here. Now, I did spend quite a bit of time going through the lines in this position. I will say that the engine has a particular affinity with the move knight to d2, and at some point white is going to play the move f5, the king side is going to be broken open, and there's going to be some sort of attack going on. But the specifics of the position are beyond the scope of the video. Long story short, I can understand why Dr. Seger did not go for this sacrifice. He did have the similar idea, however, As he plays the move queen to h5, he simply prepares bishop captures on h7 with check, and turns it into an immediate checkmating threat. Now, of course, Lasker can simply block this with g6, and if Seger were to move his queen back to d1, he could make a statement that the black king side is starting to get really loose, and you can even possibly sacrifice a piece for it. Very speculative stuff, but Seger decides to go for the more direct option with bishop captures on g6. Now, I can't say I fully believe in this attack, but I admire his spirit. I imagine that he was hoping for h captures on g6, the idea being that knight captures on g6 comes with this nice little fork. The problem for white here is that queen h7 really just blunts the attack, as white really has nothing better than to simply trade queens here and then take here on f8. This leaves black with two pieces for a rook and two pawns, which materially favors white, but I don't really see the rook being better given that there are no open files for it to be put on. The position would be at best unclear, probably favoring black somewhat, but definitely not what Seger would want out of his attack. Now this h captures on g6 move is sort of the best case scenario for Seger. The problem here is that Lasker found the absolute best move, f captures on e5. The bishop and the queen are currently both attacking targets that are sufficiently defended, so Seger is correct in that he should be removing the auxiliary attacker first. And now we see a few exchanges happen. F captures on e5, rook captures f1 with check, king captures f1, and only now h captures on g6. Here Seger retakes with the queen g6 with check, Lasker blocks with knight to g7, e captures on d6, and now queen captures on d6. Now, in contrast with the previous variation, here Lasker is the one who is up material. He's got an additional knight in exchange for these two pawns. Seger really has no compensation as his queenside development is completely non-existent, and Lasker is immediately attacking the h-pawn. So I think it's safe to say that the attack has failed, but the game must go on. Of course, Lasker's king is still completely out in the open, so there's a chance. He defends his pawn through king to g1, and now Lasker moves his queen back to f8. The previous position did have something of a threat in the form of bishop to a3, but now Lasker has made queen to f5 available, so there's no threat of this at all. Seger continues his development with knight to c3, and now Lasker finishes his own with knight to d7. Now we see Seger play the break that he has to at this point, e4, you really need to get this bishop into the game. And after d captures on e4, we indeed see the bishop be developed all the way up to h6. Now in this position, Lasker is currently up a piece, and he has a move that will completely shut down Seger's attack for good. So what I want you to do, pause the video, see if you can find the knockout blow that Lasker played to pretty much end the game immediately. I'm not going to give you that much time because it's not a super flashy move. The move Lasker played, queen to f6. Very simple stuff. This just forces a queen trade as white cannot deal with the threats against the h6 bishop and the d4 pawn at the same time. And after the queens are traded on f6, Seger is just down a piece and with no attack to show for it. Now, unfortunately, he did not resign the game at this point. He did play a few more moves, but the game is not very interesting, so I will simply let the rest play without comment. So yeah, I'm really curious what the game was that Seger drew in their group stage. As I said, it wasn't recorded, but his game here really did not inspire any confidence at all. I'm very curious what he did to hold a draw against Lasker with the black pieces, no less. Lasker played white in that game and was unable to win. So I'm not sure, but this is all we have, and it was at this point on move 36 that Hans Seger resigned the game, and the first game of the final stage of the Breslau 1889 Hauptturnier goes to Emanuel Lasker. So there you go, our coverage of the final group begins. There's going to be more games in the final group than there were played in the group stage, so there's going to be a lot more good games for us to be taking a look at later on in this tournament. So I hope to see you there, and until then, have a good one.